Hi, welcome to Briefly Brilliant with Indus Morris. I am Indus Morris. I basically started this podcast to bridge a gap between public relations students and those leading the industry. I found myself missing a certain aspect when it comes to being in college and learning about PR of what it's actually like to be in the industry and work as a professional. I know a lot of my peers have these same questions as well, so follow along as we demystify the world of public relations and equip the next generation with the knowledge and connections that they need to thrive in the industry. Today is our first episode, so thank you for watching. Our first guest is going to be Brian Mast, the head of client service and success at 104 West Partners. I look forward to talking to him and all the wisdom that he has to share with me and my audience. So thank you and follow along for more guests and more information. So welcome to Briefly Brilliant, Brian Mast. We have Brian Mast here of 104 West Partners. He is the head of client service and success. Brian, could you talk a little bit more about your job role and 104 West and what that consists of?
Yeah, 104 West Partners is a boutique B2B technology agency, and we we focus on clients that are either early stage startups or mid-sized companies in the software and hardware business of technology. And then sometimes we work with divisions of larger companies, like we work with a division of MasterCard, a division of Dropbox, some familiar names potentially. And my job as head of client service and client success is really to make sure that we have a model in place for delivering quality of work. And I've been doing this for many years, so I've learned from my own managers and peers, and even learned a lot from my clients on what defines a successful program, and also service, like having a service mentality, since we are in the professional services business, is really important as well. So my job is to make sure that as an agency, we have systems in place, we have a philosophy and standards to make sure that every client that we have, no matter how big they are, what industry they're in, that they're getting excellent level of service and strong results. And a big part of that is also making sure that I train people on my team, especially new members of our team, that so they understand how our client service model works. It might be slightly different than other agencies.
Yeah, of course. Just gonna take it back a little bit to your college days and when you were first starting out. I'm sure you see a lot of that now with the people that you're training and have joining your team. But let's take it back to you. Where did you attend university?
So I attended the University of Notre Dame in South Bend, Indiana.
All right. And what did you study while you were in university?
I studied I studied marketing. That was my degree, was in marketing, and I had a minor in communications. And uh, the reasons that I decided to choose that major was that I was, even in high school, I was interested in advertising. Like, somebody came to our career day at high school, and he was in advertising, and I said, that sounds interesting. I liked sort of the creative element of it, and I thought, well, I should major in marketing. And then, just briefly, my mom, I have a twin sister, and my mom told my sister and I, you two need to get into business, because my other sisters were getting into like science and art. And she's like, you're going to be the business people. So I'm like, oh,
I can
okay.
relate to that
But
as well.
which
Yeah.
we are. We're both in business. She's in finance, I'm in marketing and public relations. But anyway, so
Yeah.
that was my major, and that's what I graduated with.
Yeah. And how did you find your way to a more public relations centered job?
It was really a lot of serendipity. I even in I'm sure we talked about public relations in marketing classes in college, but it wasn't any significant focus, and I didn't really know much about it.
Hmm.
I was really, I wanted to get a job in advertising, but when I graduated from Notre Dame at that time, it was a rough economy and there just weren't a lot of jobs in advertising. So I just took other jobs, sort of sales and marketing support, things like that. And when I finally got into a very small advertising agency, one of my clients was a tech client, and and then I lost my job at that agency because they had me in business development, which I had no business being in business development because I was like in my early 20s. I had no network. Like
Yeah.
what was I thinking?
Yeah.
But there was one of the clients was a technology client, and I was really good with that client because I had some aptitude for technology. And
Yeah.
so then that company, after I was let go from the agency, the client reached out to me and said, "We want to hire you and we want you to do our PR and communications." And I said, "I want to do advertising." So I actually turned them down at first.
Oh,
And
okay.
they pursued me. And it's funny to think back on it now because it's like even somebody who is in their mid 20s, like they were whining, dining me. They took me out to dinner and, they were like, "No, we're going to carve out this position for you." And so finally I acquiesced and said, "Okay, as long as I can do a little bit of advertising, then I'll do public relations too." Right. It was
Yeah.
almost like it was sort of a default. Um, but then, and I didn't really know much about PR and I had to learn on the job. So I didn't have the benefit of taking any classes, doing any internships in that discipline of marketing. And so I had to wing it.
You had to wing it. And when you were winging it, when you first started out, was there any mistakes you made or funny stories that you can share that really, you know, you look back on now and you can laugh, but at the time you were like, my career is over.
Absolutely. I mean, this is back in the day when you didn't email. Like email just was not that popular. That's how long ago this was. And so you would have to, and there was no social media, so you had to, when you're pitching an editor or reporter, you would have to either send a pitch letter in the mail, like this snail mail with a stamp in an envelope, which I just think is it's just wild. Like that would take forever.
Yeah.
Or more likely, you would call them, and I was intimidated. It
Mhm.
was, that's not my favorite thing to do is pick up and do cold calls, and so,
Yeah.
but I had to do it. And the first editor I called, first reporter I called for a tech publication, she just shut me down like right away. She was too busy. I didn't have like my pitch, refined, and I got shut down. I got rejected. And that was a moment where I was like, okay, I am not built for this profession. Like I got to go do something else.
Yeah.
So I was very sort of dejected, but try and try again. And so the next call that I made was to a different editor at a different publication, and we talked for 20 minutes. She was great. She asked me questions, and I just learned more about her job. And then I started to realize, like, okay, I can do this. This is about certainly it's about making sure you know the person you're reaching out to, but also be able to build some level at least at that point to build some level of rapport. And
Mhm.
so I regained that sort of initially lost confidence, and then I'm sure I made lots of, mistakes along the way, but I really learned as I was going. And then I realized I really like this. In fact, like a year or two later, somebody reached out to me from an advertising agency and wanted to interview me and bring me in. There you go. That was the goal for many years, was to get into an ad agency. And I actually turned it down
Wow.
because I said, I'm really happy here. And I think I realized this is actually what I'm good at. And that's, 30 years later, I'm still doing it.
Yeah. Did you find that the trial and error from trying to pick up in the public relations world and learn everything allowed you to be able to turn down that job that you really wanted in advertising for so long?
Yeah, I think it was learning a whole new discipline, and I'm sure I would have enjoyed the job in advertising, but I think in learning that I was far more sort of invested in it because I was trying new things, obviously at that point I was must have been successful, otherwise I would have taken the other job.
Yeah.
You know, I can tell that my bosses were really pleased with the work that I was doing. I really enjoyed engaging with a lot of different editors and reporters. And in those days, we would go out and do press tours. So we would travel to New York, Boston. I was in LA at the time, so I traveled to San Francisco, and those were all the tech publications were. So we would, it was a hardware product that a company I was working at, and we would travel probably every 3 months whenever we had a new product, and we would take that product out and meet with people, go to trade shows and conferences. It was a lot of in-person interaction, and so that also helped because you you become part of a community,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just by nature of the work that you're doing, you become a part of this community. And it was a great group of people. And I got to go to New York for the first time. I'd never been to New York. I got to go to Boston. And I was going to San Francisco a lot. I'm like, this is great. I
Yeah.
want to keep doing this.
Do you find that now with social media and remote work and platforms like Zoom is kind of taking away that travel aspect and even that like community aspect within a workplace where entry level people can meet their coworkers and their peers in a more personal way? And do you find that that's affecting how your college graduate hires are learning PR, or do you find that beneficial?
I think I think because there are so many ways of connecting and communicating that aren't in person that can be very productive and useful, that I don't think that there's a significant um, uh, I don't think that there's anything significantly missing by not having that in-person engagement. I mean, it's important. It's important to have that in-person engagement. But for example, we hired during the pandemic, we hired more than one intern who started remotely, like never came into the office, maybe came into the office to pick up their laptop, but that was it. And for weeks or months, probably never met any other team members in person, except for like maybe if we had some sort of gathering outside. Like
Yeah,
that was the early days. And
yeah,
so those people had to learn um, how to do their job and to make connections with their team members remotely. And many of them are still with us today, and they're excellent. But I think that they eventually, as we started to go back to the office, and we're our folks, you know, some of us are remote, but there's a fair number of us that are in the Denver office. I'm in San Francisco, and they'll go to the office at least 1 or 2 days a week. Once a month, there's always a happy hour or something like that. So um, I think what what I think is important for the in-person interaction is it's really the random meetings or discussions that you have walking down the hall. Like
hmm
when I was learning this job and this craft, it you know in the early days, I was in the office 5 days a week, right? And but I learned a lot from my boss. Like he taught me a lot about how to do PR, and so I was a quick study, and that really helped. And you know, and then when I was managing, once I became more senior and I was managing people, it was a lot easier to, there's a management style called walk around management by walking around, right? I think it
Hmm.
was Hewlett Packard and those had sort of had came up with that approach, but it's just checking in with people. It doesn't have to be a formal meeting, and there's a way to meet with people and be have it be far more sort of informal, less intimidating if you just sort of walk up to their cube or their desk and say, "Hey, how's it going?" Or "Hey, I had this idea. Can I, you know, can I run it by you and let me know what you think?" And so I, that's really important. It can be hard to do that sometimes on Zoom, or we use Slack. It's a really helpful communications platform, but in person can be really valuable too.
Yeah. Do you constantly, well, constantly probably is not the right word, but do you find yourself reflecting on the way that you learned the craft and then seeing how you're training your new hires? Do you find yourself looking back on that and doing things differently, or do you find that it still is applicable today to how PR is being run in the industry?
Yeah, I think it's a mix because certainly a lot of the core, not just skill sets, but capabilities, capabilities are really earned over time. Um, but I earn those capabilities through just working with lots of different folks. Like I said, even some clients were really instrumental in helping me understand what a level of quality really means. And and so I think that sort of fundamentals of client service, fundamentals of quality of work, like writing style and grammar, and even how you produce a document, just page numbers, having the client's logo, having it look nice, all those things, those are timeless, right? But when it comes to different approaches to how we do PR, how we create stories and narratives for our clients, and uh, how we illustrate those, how do we bring them to life with content, and how we get them out there. Um, I'm I certainly have ideas and ways that I did that I've done for many years, but I think there's a lot more learning that we as senior people are open to by learning from the rest of our team members, some of whom may be junior staff just out of college, and there's a lot to learn, and that's also the reason I'm still doing this. Is if I felt like I knew everything and knew how to do everything, I'd probably be bored, and I
Yeah.
wouldn't. And I wasn't if I wasn't learning anything or I wasn't challenged, I would. I don't know. I'd be doing something else. I don't know what it would be. So
Yes, that
this
is
this
reassuring
is
here.
yeah. It can be really challenging. Um, it's really challenging work to do.
Hmm.
Uh, but when you can be successful and come up with great solutions and see the results and have your clients see the results, you know, it's very rewarding.
Yes, that is purely why I started this podcast because it's reassuring to hear that uh all different viewpoints and like experience levels can come together and mix and keep it innovating and keep the industry pushing forward, which is what excites me the most about going into public relations. And I know that for my peers as well, it's just a little bit of like a pulling the curtain open a little bit and seeing what it's actually like because it is such a misunderstood at some points industry that,
Yeah.
sometimes you're like, what am I getting myself into a little bit? But it is reassuring to hear that there are people and agencies that are very much for having that collaborative spirit when it comes to hiring and training and innovating. Thank you so much for joining me today. Our 15 minutes is up. I very much appreciate you being the first guest on my podcast. Is there anything else you would like to add or say to the audience?
I think, one thing in our business that's really important is storytelling. And I think when you're early on, or if you're interviewing or looking for an internship, talk about stories that are interesting to you,
Hmm.
which can be something you're reading, could be a book, it could be something you're watching, it could be video, whatever. But the fundamentals of what we do is creating an interesting and compelling story. And so think about that a lot, keep that in mind. And if you're passionate about that, I think you'll do well in this business.
Thank you.